Hello and welcome to the Carlson Cards podcast. Today, a Packers fan and a Bears fan get together. We talk a little football and some Bears cards. So I'll pretend to be interested while we look at these awesome cards. But in all honesty, Jason has an amazing collection, so there should be a ton of fun. I love this era of cards. You guys know this, in football cards especially. So it seemed like a really good episode to tape right before the season starts. So, Jason, I'll start with you. How is everything going? What are the expectations coming up here as we're kicking off preseason football? What are you thinking so far?
Oh, it's going great, man. Very excited because before this comes out, Caleb's going to be out on Saturday against the Bills for the first preseason game, or the second preseason game, I guess. But I'm excited to see that. Training camp has been a little iffy, so I guess we'll see how that goes, especially with the offensive line. Like, that's been the problem for the past, 2-3 years since Ryan Poles has been the general manager. He hasn't really wanted to fix that in any sense of the way. But other than that, very excited, obviously. There's a lot of hype around this team coming into it, not just from like a Bears fan perspective, but just like an NFL perspective. They just recently made Caleb Williams not the profile picture, the cover picture for the NFL profile on Twitter and Facebook. So they're really trying to push him hard in that sense. And Hard Knocks just premiered last night on Tuesday, so that was fun to watch. And obviously a lot of Caleb Williams was featured there as well. So yeah, just a lot of hype and excited to see what happens.
What was the takeaway from that episode? I actually am not a Hard Knocks watcher, but I can appreciate it. Do you have any takeaways from watching that?
I think the biggest takeaway for me is to just have a more detailed understanding of what goes on behind the doors. Because I don't know what the Packers do, but the Bears released a 1920 football drive that's kind of like, hey, look, here's some behind-the-scenes footage. But Hard Knocks goes even more into that, right? And like you, I actually haven't watched Hard Knocks before the Bears were on it, but obviously being a big Bears fan, I wanted to catch the season, see what it's all about. But yeah, it's just a more intimate setting, which I thought was really interesting. You saw people singing, the rookies singing in front of all the veterans as part of their initiation and training camp. And you saw them take out a slip and slide to practice quarterback sliding, which is pretty awesome to see. So you just get to see much more detailed level of training camp than you typically do.
That's awesome. That makes sense. So many jokes I could make there about the Bears, but I'm going to just restrain myself. We're not going to do that today. We're going to treat you with respect here. So funny thing, we were chatting before the episode. We were kind of talking about, I brought up how great the receivers are here. Like the offense to me, I can't imagine, or I couldn't think of really a year prior to this as, looking at the Bears where you're as excited maybe about the offense. But then you brought up a good point. There was another year that you felt was pretty comparable, if not better. Would you mind sharing maybe what team that was and just talk about some of the players there? And maybe if you want to connect to like you're collecting, like if it was just nostalgia driven by that team that kind of drove the players you collect, I'd love to hear a little more about that.
Yeah. So that team, right, that was the 2013 Chicago Bears team. If I remember correctly, we were second in scoring, only behind the Peyton Manning and Denver Broncos that year. So that was full of so many skill position guys. You had Brandon Marshall, you had Alshon Jeffrey, Martellus Bennett, Matt Forte, and Jay Cutler as well, just kind of slinging it everywhere, right? He was definitely his best season by far for Jay. So that obviously really solidified a lot of the nostalgia for me with those players, right? I mean, as you can see on my page, I got a lot of Cutler, a lot of Forte, a lot of Jeffrey, Marshall, Bennett, all those guys. So just being able to have an offense like that and watching it special back then was truly amazing and spectacular.
So how long were you a Bears fan before that? I mean, you obviously, I'm sure, grew up with it. Like, do you have any old memories growing up with the team? Like, love to hear just a little bit more about you and how, football ties in and the Bears. I'd imagine it runs in the family, of course, but love to hear a little bit more about your origin story here.
Yeah, for sure. So you were right. It does run in my family. So my dad is a second generation season ticket holder. My grandpa was a season ticket holder when the Bears used to play in Wrigley. So it's actually been really ingrained in my family for like decades at this point. I want to one day hopefully get my own season tickets. But yeah, and then so when I was younger, right, my dad, like I said, he's had season tickets my whole life basically. And my uncle and a cousin on my dad's side of the family also had season tickets. So when I was growing up, we just traveled to games together, right? And that was fun to kind of commute with them and just go to the games together and have a fun time watching them. And I remember just watching all those 2000s teams with my dad, right? Urlacher, Tillman, all those guys. We'd always get like a Subway sub and then bring that to the game into the stadium. And we got there super early, like an hour before kickoff. So we got time to watch them like warm up, eat our Subway. And then eventually they used to have this inflatable bear because I'm on the south side. Or my dad's seats are on the south side of the end zone. So and the players come out on the northwest side. So we were able to clearly see them come out, and they'd have like this inflatable bear, and they announce all the players, right? Announcing Urlacher, announcing Tillman. And that's also where I have nostalgia for those guys, right? Is growing up with it. Like I said, it's in my family. We talk about it all the time. In fact, my two uncles, dad, and cousin just made the trip out to Canton to see Hester, McMichael, and Peppers get in the Hall of Fame. So it was really fun with them. So yeah, it's just like you said, it's just in my family, in my blood. It's been in my life as long as I can remember. So
Totally makes sense. So are Bears games kind of like the movies where you have to hide the food when you come in? Like, where's this sub sandwich being stuffed to get in there?
no, they actually just let you bring it in as long as you like have. Yeah, it has to be a clear bag. Okay, so clear. It's a Subway sub. You can bring it in. I went to the Thursday night game against the Panthers last year, and we did that again for the first time in forever. But you can just walk in with it. They don't seem to care to stop you. So
That's awesome. I'll have to try that at Packer game. I know you cannot sneak beer in there. I do know that, but
yeah,
I don't know about food. But
yeah.
um, anyways, here. So again, good to learn a little bit more about like the team fandom and the history there. Would love to know like where did collecting tie into this? Like, and I don't know. Obviously, we've chatted a long time, but I don't know the answer to this. Like, did you grow up with cards, or did you just kind of find it later on in life? How did that come into play here?
Yeah, so my dad was a big collector of the junk wax era stuff. So he did a lot of, I would say, early 80s to early 90s, kind of like the 80s decade in general. And he had a bunch of those, I don't know what the proper term is, but they're like the 5-row cardboard boxes, all one level, right, for individual cards. And he had like 4 or 5 of those that were under their bed when I was growing up. So I remember all the time, like just sitting in my parents' bedroom, dragging these boxes out from under my parents' bed and just looking through all the cards he had, right? Like he even had like a few stuff, like 86 Jerry Rice. He bought a few Walter Payton rookies and a few second-year stuff. So what I would do, eventually I got to the point where I was like, hey, Dad, you have a lot of extras of these, because he was a big set builder of that stuff from that era, like, you know, Tops. And then I think in the early 90s, it was Pro Set and Fleer. So I was like, Dad, you got a lot of extras. Can I just start taking some of these from your collection and then building my own sets? So that's what I did. I have a complete binder of 1992 Fleer, my parents, that I mostly got from my dad, and I eventually filled in the gaps here and there of online purchases and stuff like that. I also set built like 92 Tops. That's in my parents' place still. 91 Fleer, 90 Pro Set. So yeah, it originated from my dad, and then myself in the early 2000s, I started to buy some packs myself, right? So I would start to buy like '06 Tops, '07 Tops, '08 Tops, and I try to like set collect in that sense and just buying the base of that. So I was really a big set collector as a kid. In fact, a cool little memory about collecting as a kid was I was trying to build the '05 Top set, and that came out right before our famous '06 season. And my cousin had just gotten one of those hobby boxes for Christmas, and we were going to watch the Super Bowl at his house. So I was like, hey, cousin, during the Super Bowl, can I go through your spare '05 Tops cards to see what ones I need for the set and I can grab from you? And he was like, sure. So I was like, I think 10 years old, sitting there sifting through his excess '05 Tops, you know, and then just getting the ones I need from his set, while getting excited at first for the beginning of the game and then getting very sad as the game went on later. So that's kind of where it started. I was going to say, to tie it into now today, so I would say the last set that I really looked at as a kid was like '08 Tops, right? So Calvin Johnson's rookie year, Marshawn Lynch. Unfortunately, I did not pull a Calvin Johnson rookie. I looked at that recently, nor an Adrian Peterson. But I did get it in Marshawn Lynch and Darrell Revis. So anyway, that was my last set that I collected as a kid. And then I want to say in early 2020, actually right before the pandemic, my then girlfriend at the time, now wife, we were talking about getting married and needing to buy an engagement ring. So I was talking to somebody, and they had mentioned how they collect and also flip pops, you know, the Funko Pop figures, the vinyls.
Yep.
So I was like, okay, well, I used to do sports cards as a kid. Maybe I can just try to like flip some sports cards to get some money to buy my then girlfriend an engagement ring, right? So that didn't last long. So I was buying like Kenyon Drake RPA. I bought an Easton Stick RPA. I was getting a little into Noah Font at the time. So I just started to buy a bunch of those random guys, and obviously it did not work out well for me because I not only bought the wrong cards and wrong players that didn't turn out well, but I also just started to buy Bears cards pretty fast, and then went down that path of like, hey, this is new to me. These are numbered. What does that mean? These are shiny, right? I mean, as a kid, like I said, I just looked at base stuff and collecting base sets. I mean, I would eventually see the Topps Chrome packs at Target or Walmart, but I'm like, why buy 4 cards when I can buy 10? It's simple math as a kid. So, and then, like I said, when I got back into it, I saw numbering, I saw shiny. I was like, there are patches in cards now. I don't know what that really entails. There are game worn and player worn. So all of that really just kind of wanted me to explore what Bear stuff was out there because of how much seemed different from being a kid. And that's obviously grown and evolved since then. And here we are 4.5 years later.
Awesome. So that journey there, were there any, say, like, pain points or struggles as you're getting started? I know you touched on a few there where, you kind of started maybe more in the, "I'm gonna buy players that I don't care about, but maybe can make money off of." Like, is there any other pain points or tips that you'd share that would maybe help someone else who's pretty new to collecting nowadays?
Yeah, I think, looking back at it, I think for me, the biggest, well, I'll start off with a tip. The biggest tip to me is just kind of enjoy the journey, right? Like, let
Mhm.
yourself be confused and let yourself figure out what's out there, right? That to me is actually a really fun part of where I started up as a kid, or in 2020 again, as opposed to being a kid, right? It's just kind of letting yourself explore and figure out what's out there. And some of the pain points too, right? I mean, sometimes it can be a little confusing. I think one of the hardest parts for me was also like understanding how sets are built nowadays, right? Because like I said, I was all base as a kid. I didn't understand how parallels are structured or how many there could be per set. So right, so finding that information was kind of hard at first, right? It took me a while, but I eventually found trading card DB. That's kind of what I use to reference what cards are in sets and the numbering of all those cards and such along those lines. So I remember one of the earliest things that confused me was I bought I think it was a David Montgomery Contenders auto that was
Mhm.
optic, but I didn't realize it was optic because I knew of the base Contenders. So I was like, what is going on here? Like, it's the same card, but just shiny. So I didn't realize that that was actually two different sets, right? So just being able to figure out what those sets are and what goes into them was probably the biggest pain point for me. And like I said, trading card DB was the one that I've used so much to gain my knowledge throughout this journey.
So in those early stages too, are there any cards that stand out to you that you remember buying really fondly that maybe you still have or don't have? Maybe anything that we're not going to talk about later, but just any random ones that come to mind that you were just excited to find that even existed back then?
Yeah, yeah. So I would say definitely is it's the game worn flawless stuff or national treasures. So I was looking at it, and if I remember correctly, I think I got some notes here. So my first Bears card was, oh, I'm sorry, my second Bears card was a game worn patch of Brian Urlacher and National Treasures. It was numbered at 99. It was like a napkin patch white. I did eventually sell that down the road, but that was one of the ones that jumped out to mind. Another one is used to have a out of 25 flawless Charles Tillman three-color
Mhm.
patch. That's like, if you scroll at the bottom of my page, it's still there, posted. But I moved that one a bit ago. That was one that I kind of missed. And sometimes sometimes I think about it, like I should have kept that one. It was like a big card of one of my favorite players growing up. So there are some of those cards that I started off with that I definitely moved on from. That, yeah, they've been around or have gone out, I should say.
Yeah, the ones that got away.
Yeah,
I was gonna ask now if because we have a ton of awesome cards to talk about, so I was gonna share my screen here. This is a sneaky last second addition to the
yeah,
slideshow you added that I'm excited because that you did add it. So I'd love if you could maybe just explain what we're looking at here, and love to hear like what this photo means to you, the player, anything you feel like sharing here with the audience. I'd love to hear it.
yeah. So I'm actually going to go back to the start of how I got into this set in the first place. So, like I said, I was looking up some stuff from my eBay when I first joined back in the hobby, and the '06 Finest Urlacher Blue X Fractor was the third Bears card I ever bought, and I didn't even know how of its provenance at the time, right? So
So
when
was it
I
just
bought,
the looks? Was it just the looks you saw and thought it looked good? So you were like, I'm gonna grab
yeah,
this.
yeah, I thought
Okay.
it looked good. I think I got it for like $5 at the time because I was early 2020, right? So I was really excited about getting that card in. And at one point, my wife was, or my then girlfriend, now wife at the time, was like, "Well, you're just collecting, you're just buying random cards. Like, what is your end goal here?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe I can look at this 2006 Finest set that I just bought of Urlacher. This looks cool. There's a lot of parallels of it, and little did I know how hard it would be to actually acquire some of these. As we all know, that Gold X Fractor is a pain to get. Um, so that '06 Finest Urlacher Blue X Fractor, I eventually sent that in my first PSA order ever. It only got a 9, so the one in this photo is not the one that I initially got, but I still have that one. Um, but yeah, so from there, right, like my wife kind of being like, how are you going to focus on collecting this? This is what came out of that, right? I wanted to say, okay, let me get the rainbow of this. Obviously, I don't have all of the one of ones, but I do got both reds, both blues, greens, blacks, and golds. My goal at the end is to get PSA 10s of all of them, and this photo is actually a bit outdated. I have the red X Fractor and the black in a 10 now too. But yeah, that's kind of the origin of the set, right? And like kind of connecting that all together, I think you mentioned this on an episode or two ago. It's how like you almost have nostalgia for the nostalgia. So like I'm nostalgic for starting my collection where I bought this card that I was nostalgic for Brian Urlacher, right? So it's crazy how that connection can kind of tie into two different eras of my life. And like I said at the beginning of the podcast, going to games with my dad and watching Urlacher play on the field, and then seeing this set and starting to go after it, and now also using this set as a point of nostalgia for starting my collecting, 4.5 years ago. It's crazy how that all ties together. So
Yeah, I wish I had the foresight to be buying '06 Finest in 2020 like you did. I was buried for 2 more years before I got out of that hellhole that I was in. So out of these, I just out of pure curiosity, aesthetics wise, do you have a preference or favorite card here? I mean, maybe besides the golds, are there any of the other? And if maybe the answer wasn't a gold, but if there's any that you really stand out to you out of this set, I'd love to hear. Like if you have a specific one that you just really like the most, looks wise.
I do like the black X Factor a lot. I think the black on navy kind of gets a little team color going better than the light blue on navy almost. Um, and I think out of 25 for the black X doesn't make it too hard to find, although it's been a while since a copy has popped up. So I think just everything about the black X Factor really is one that I like that comes out to me a lot. And I like as a card design.
I have one sitting in my PC box too. Funny. I don't know if it's a pop two and we have both. That'd be kind of funny.
Oh, yeah.
Um, One question about this too, is curious, like how much rainbow collecting ties into the rest of your PC. Like, was it kind of like you completed this set fairly? I'm not sure again exactly when you fully completed it, but besides the one-on-ones, but did you ever, expand the rainbow collecting amongst your PC, or have you kind of stayed away from it just out of pure like quantity wise?
Yeah, so when I first started, I didn't even know about rainbows, and then I think in 2021, I bought a 2018 Allen Robinson Gold Prism, and I was like, "Oh, this is cool. It's a cool set. I might try going for the rainbow for all that." So I started to go for the 2018 Prism Allen Robinson set. I never finished it. I eventually sold all those off because I think the biggest thing I learned from that experience was like, don't try and start a rainbow unless you have the one of one. Which obviously in this picture I didn't do that. But so with that being said, right, like I do kind of have an eye towards rainbows, but I think nowadays my focus is more so to just get the rare stuff. The one rainbow that I'm still working on that I actually acquired the one of one for is the 2015 Prism Gale Sayers. I got the black Pulsar back in 2021. I got the gold that same year, and I've been buying the parallels ever since. I actually just recently got the gold vinyl out of 5 of that last fall. So now my 2015 Prism Gale Sayers is down to 1 card, which is the white sparkle. So if you have one, let me know. But yeah, so to answer your question, right, like rainbows aren't really the biggest focus of my collecting. If I get a one of one, I'm typically not gonna go into getting the rainbow for it. But back in 2021, when I acquired the Gale Sayers Black Pulsar, I was like, this is a cool one to get going. So I only have like one rainbow that I'm really dedicated to working on. Oh, and this one too. I would love to get the one of ones of these '06 Finest one day as well.
So 2 things there. You mentioned the white sparkle. I was ironically just looking. There's like I don't think it'll still be up when this airs, but there's a Peyton Manning white sparkle PSA 10 on PWCC right now. I just had no idea how rare those actually are. So I looked it up and I was shocked. I mean, like, I don't remember what the sales history was for that one for Card Ladder, but I mean, like, I don't think there's been more than 3 sales, like total, like period. Like, I didn't realize how rare that set was. I had no idea, and I've
Yeah.
never pursued it. No, nothing like that. It doesn't pop up in my save search. It's kind of a weird phrase, like white sparkle wouldn't really appear ever. But I was shocked. So I can totally imagine why you're looking for that one still. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
they have any idea on the print run out of curiosity? I don't know if you know that. I have no idea, of course. But
I've heard the rumor I've heard is that it's out of 20.
okay.
So, double the rarity of the gold, which I mean, it still makes sense that it doesn't pop up that often, right? I mean, 20 is still not that many at all, especially for popular players like Manning or in my case, Gale Sayers. Yeah.
I feel like that's a sneaky year too. Last comment here, where like with all the retired, there's so many good retired players in that set.
Yeah.
What I was getting at there. Like that one's one where I did not realize how many great players. Like even I got that. Like recently posted that Barry Sanders select gold I got. And I
Yeah.
was curious. I was like, so I knew that was. I always knew I never like was really like outward about it. But that was his first Prism gold, which I thought was cool. And then I was like, well, what other ones does he have? And he doesn't have one until 2015. Then that's really his first like from the flagship Prism gold.
Yeah.
But that said, I don't know. It's kind of funny how I I don't know about you, but I like came around on that a lot. I used to think like these vets that are not playing anymore, why are they still being included in sets? But then I look back at some of these early years of Prism. I'm like, oh, it's kind of cool. You can get these cards actually. Now that I think that, I don't care about the super, like this year's version, but like that old stuff. I don't know. I just feel like it's kind of cool.
Yeah. And funny enough, like you mentioned how Barry's first Prism gold was in select. 2013, and then he had his first official Prism release in 2015. That's how Walter Payton is too. I mean, Walter Payton has the 2013 Select. He's in that, and then his first year of Prism is 2015. So it's kind of funny how I don't know if they intentionally did that, but the parallels between him and Walter are pretty cool.
Do me, you, and Pac Nicholson have to like flip a coin when that pops up or something?
Probably, yeah.
I don't even want to think about it. One of us, we all just better find independent copies, and then we can just high five and move on.
We'll just buy it 3 ways, easy.
Yeah, split custody or whatever. But
yeah.
Okay, awesome. So next I'll move on. So these are 3 cards that were honorable mentions for your full Mount Rushmore that we'll share in a second. And I'm just really excited to talk about these. So I'd love if you could kind of step through maybe whichever order you want here. And just, again, reminder to just describe what we're looking at for those that don't have a visual. Because I know a lot of people use Apple Podcasts and they don't have a visual when they're listening on that.
Yep, for sure. So I'm just going to go left to right here. So the first card I got 2012 Prism Jay Cutler Prism Gold, graded a PSA 9. This was my very first 2012 Prism Gold. I remember seeing it pop up back in, I think, late 2022, fall of 2022, and I submitted an offer, and it got accepted, and I was extremely excited. It was between this and one of the Jay Cutler card that we'll get into later for my Mount Rushmore, but I had to represent this one on here, right? It's such an iconic Bears Prism Gold. It, not only in the sense of it being 2012, and I'm still our best quarterback ever, Jay Cutler, right? And I have good memories of him, right? It's one of the best Bears Prism Golds out there. So when I had the opportunity to get it and I saw it, I had a snag on it. I actually, there were like, I think 2 or 3 other times that I missed this card.
Wow.
Before this one popped up on eBay for OBO, and I felt so good to finally check this one off my list because, like I said, I had been going for it for probably 1 to 2 years at that point to try and just get one of these copies. So that's really just spectacular to be able to finally cross onto my list back then.
I have to ask, at the time when you're watching Jay Cutler in the early 2010s, did you have any idea you'd be collecting his cards 10 years from now? Like, I feel like when I was watching him as a Packers fan, again, there's some bias there.
Yeah.
You knew the guy was pretty good, but he's just like, I don't know. I even mentally have fondness for remembering watching him, which I never, ever would have expected 10 years ago. Like, do you feel that at all?
I do. Like back in the day, back in the day when he was still playing, there was a lot of parity among him. It was like you either hate Jay or loved him. And I was always at the camp that I loved him. Like he was doing the best he could all the time, in my opinion. Right. And it's funny you mentioned that because one of my more vivid memories of Jay Cutler was not on the football field, but actually when I was working my first job at a concession stand, I actually got into like a light argument with my then like not manager, but like supervisor about if Jay Cutler was good or not. And I was like, he's good. Like he's the best thing we had. He's like one of the best quarterbacks we ever had. So yeah, I've always been on a Jay Cutler train. I remember buying his jersey like the first or second to last year he was with us. So I've just always been on the train. So to answer your question, yeah, I would definitely have envisioned myself collecting him if I collected cards back then. So
awesome. What's the next card here you want to touch on?
Yep. Next card is the 2012 National Treasures Matt Forte 1/1 game used full equipment shield auto. Not an on-card auto, but obviously being a game-worn shield, I had to get this on my PC when I had the chance to. You're gonna see like on this slide, obviously 2 of the 3 cards are shiny, and you'll see in the Mount Rushmore that a lot of my focus is the shiny numbered stuff. But I'm not gonna turn down a nice game-worn auto card when I can. And obviously this is I'm wearing the jersey of Forte of the 1940s throwback. He's like the biggest focal point of my PC. So to be able to get a card like this of one of my favorite players was just incredible. I remember when this thing came up on auction. I want to say this came up on auction back in 2021 or maybe 2022. I knew who won it, and then eventually, like a year after he had won it, I reached out to him. I was like, "Hey, is this available?" And yeah, he said yes. So we made I sent an offer, he countered, and I accepted, and I got this card in hand. And like, it is by far my best game-worn patch auto card in my collection, so that's why I had to include it as an honorable mention. But yeah,
that's amazing. And like, question here, how in the heck, I gotta just say it straight, how did you know to buy all this stuff in 2021? Like, did you really struggle only for like a year before you came into, oh, shields are good, oh, 2012 Prism Gold is good? Like, I feel like nowadays it's so everyone talks about this stuff, but I felt like I never knew this stuff was even out there back then. So like, I guess what I'm getting at is you just kind of stumble in and have great taste in 2021, or was there anything where you learned it from somebody, or how did that happen?
I don't recall ever really messaging with a lot of people about like what cards are the best. To your point, I think I just kind of stumbled into it because I don't want to spoil the Mount Rushmore right now, but one of the cards in there I got back in 2021, and it's a massive card nowadays, right? And I think to me it was just like I like these guys. Prism is a popular set. Like people talk about Prism when I first joined the hobby, right? I think like Luca was hot. Luca's still hot, obviously. But when I joined the hobby, my point being is like a lot of the big names when I would listen to podcasts back then would talk about Prism, right? And but like or like stuff like game worn shields or like game worn logo mans, right? And nobody ever touched that stuff in football, especially for Bears collectors too. I've noticed a lot of Bears collectors, especially when I started collecting, they would always go towards the game worn stuff. So I always wanted to buy the shiny stuff because that stuff seemed to be the cool, rare stuff, especially if sets like Prism, where all the big name players have those Prism cards going for big money, even like the base stuff like we saw back in the day. So I think that's kind of how that happened, right? Yeah, like I just kind of gravitated towards that shinier stuff, and I just kind of saw it on eBay. I spent hours on eBay just looking through things or spending a lot of time on trading card DB, right? Understanding sets. So just kind of stumbled into it, I guess you'd say.
But it's awesome though that I would add to this that you spent time researching, it paid off, and it was led by like fandom and collecting like that. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah,
just pure, like you just purely stumbled into it. You still have a lot of these cards, and it's just I don't know. It's awesome,
yeah,
and I'm sure you paid a absolute fraction for what you'd have to pay nowadays for a lot of this stuff, which is I'm sure a big win too for you.
yeah, and yeah, exactly. Like I said, like I said at the beginning of the pod when I first started getting into collecting, I was trying to flip to afford an engagement ring, but I eventually gave that up and started buying bear stuff, and here we are now, where a lot of that bear stuff I bought at the beginning of my collecting is still with me today. So
And meanwhile, your girlfriend at the time's like, "Why are you holding on to this stuff? What the heck?" And then you're sitting here pretty like, "Oh yeah, still got it."
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Then third and final card here.
Yeah. So third and final card, '06 finest Brian Urlacher Gold Extractor PSA 5. So yeah, this is the one and only Gold Extractor Urlacher I have ever seen in my 4.5 years back in the hobby. I want to say this one popped up in January of 2022. It popped up as OBO. I was an idiot, made an offer, didn't bin it, but luckily my offer got accepted. So here we are today. And the reason that I actually did find out why it's a 5, if on the other side there is a pretty huge crease on the top left of the card that you can only see when angling it in the red up kind of light. But what else is there to say about the Gold Extractors, especially from '06, right? '06 Finest is my favorite set of all time. The card itself is gorgeous, right? The full color background, Urlacher's full posing, trying to make a run towards stopping a gap for a run or tackling the quarterback or whatever he's trying to do there. And then, yeah, '06 Finest Gold Extractor. It's incredible to me that I was able to actually add this card to my Bears PC, right? There are so many people out there that are looking for this year or the '05 Finest year of Gold Extractor. And I just feel so grateful to actually have a copy of this in my PC, and especially the only one I've ever seen in my 4.5 years back. So,
Yeah, for sure. And what's cool is, like you said, with it being a 5, there's a huge variation amongst 5s. I mean, I gotta say, right? Like you could have the front torched up with print line scratches or off centered or ink or something, but to have just a wrinkle in the back that you can barely see, I'm sure you'll take that every day of the week. So that worked out
yeah,
pretty
yeah,
well.
that's very true, actually. Because I remember, when I sent that off for grading back in 2022, I got it back and I was like, what the hell's going on here? I have no idea what caused this, to get a 5. So, yeah.
All worked out. All right. Now, round of applause. We have an absolutely, it's just stupidly ridiculous Mount Rushmore here, even just seeing it again for the second time. I'm excited to hear about these. I'd love to hear again, just like you've been doing a great job, just acquisition stories, whatever you want to say about the cards. Love to hear it, and start with whatever one you want, of course, too.
Okay. I'm going to go a little bit out of order on this one.
Sure.
I'll start on the left. So the one on the left here, 2015 Finest Jay Cutler BGS 95 Gem Mint, 1 of 1 Super Factor. This one is actually a very recent purchase. I want to say I got this 3-4 months ago.
Oh, okay.
What I like to do is I like to go in the Bears Facebook groups, and I'll just search for like Super Factor 1 of 1, and like kind of just try and sift through comments from like 4 or 5 years ago or till now, right? And typically it hasn't been super fruitful for me to find cards that in that manner. But then one day I actually found this in the comments of a post that I hadn't seen before. I was like, holy shit, I need to go get this. So I messaged the seller, or not the seller, excuse me, the owner of the card at the time. I was like, hey man, I saw you got this comment from like 4 years ago. Do you happen to still have this card? Is it available? Yeah, all that fun stuff. And he came back to me pretty fast. He said, no, I'm a Bears fan. I actually pulled this card and graded it myself back in the day. So I'm the only guy who's owned it. It's been in my PC forever. I'm not going to be moving it anytime soon. And I didn't push him anymore after that. I was like, all right, I understand. I'm the same way. If I had a car like this and I pulled it, being the huge Bears fan I am, I would not want to sell it. But then the next morning I woke up to a message from him, and he was like, hey man, I realized my son isn't going to want this stuff when I want to pass it on to him. So I'm going to let you have it. What you got a number in mind? And I sent him a number, and he was like, that's pretty fair compared to what people offer me nowadays for stuff. And he accepted. I sent him one offer, he accepted. I got the card in hand. So, and then when I made the post about this, I just kind of love storied about it, because it's incredible for me for this card to go from like one Bears fan who pulled it to another Bears fan, and that's it, right? 2 people have owned that card in its history. So that's pretty incredible to me.
I always love that like story, because I had that recently too. I added a 2012 Prism Gold Clay Matthews, ironically, talking Packers Bears here, and that one I always like to do that, like you just said, when you get a card, even if they don't directly say it, it's always kind of fun saying like, what's the story here, especially if it's like my case was ungraded, the guy didn't look like he has a lot of cards, especially not listed on eBay. And to find out, yeah, I pulled it in 2012. I lived on an army base in South Dakota or something, just making this up, but that's something similar to what the story was. I just love that, because like you said, it hasn't been passed around the neighborhood. It's just, you get to enjoy it now as a team fan, which is so cool.
Yeah, exactly.
One question with this one too. How do you view things now? Like, and especially I know the next 2 cards we're going to talk about kind of fit this boat as well. How do you view it nowadays when you see kind of the crazy demand for these one of ones and the prices people are paying for these things? Like, as a collector, are you ever like, dang, if I get a certain number, I would sell this because I kind of have to, like, I just, and purely like whatever. Or are you a person where, like, looking at these, it's like, these are my ride or die. I don't care. They're always going to be worth good money. Like, I just want to enjoy them. Like, have you given that any thought, just out of curiosity? Because I've seen a lot of cards moving hands from people who probably were not actively selling, but got really big offers on this kind of stuff. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I have thought about that recently, and I think my gut tells me I wouldn't sell them, honestly, unless like I'm in dire circumstances, like I lost my job, I need the money or something like that. I just don't think enough money would convince me to get rid of these, because like, kind of just tying back to the beginning of the episode, right? Like it's so ingrained in who I am to be a Bears fan, and it's part of who I am. It's part of my family, right? Like, it's so ingrained in my mind to be a Bears fan that like selling stuff like this just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, there are times where I would post on my Snapchat story about like selling a card or saying bye to this card, and my dad would be like, "Why are you selling that? It's a cool Bears card." And I'm just like, "Well, I need the funds for this other cool Bears card, and I can get this one back." But in this case, right, with these ones there's no guarantee you'll get these back ever, right? So that's kind of where I draw the line. Is like, can I get the card back eventually? But in most cases, with stuff like this on my Mount Rushmore, the answer is no. So, yeah, that's and then it's yeah.
That makes sense. I'm glad you touched on that with the one of ones, because I've never owned a one of one, actually. So that's why I was always curious what the mindset would be, because I can imagine being in that situation where it's like just so tough, because if you like you said, you likely won't get it back. So that's cool to hear that you've kind of thought through it. I just want to pick your brain a little bit on that one.
For sure.
Okay, awesome. What's the next card you want to touch on here?
I'm actually going to jump all the way to the right now, and I'm going to go the 2012 Prism Gold Devin Hester BGS 9. So this card is, thinking about it, I don't think I can think of a bigger Bears Prism Gold card. I mean, maybe when Justin Fields was still on the team, you could argue that his rookie Prism Gold was a bigger Bears card, especially value-wise. It was. But, I mean, now with Hester getting into the Hall of Fame, it's 2012 Prism, which we all know is an insanely important set for the hobby. It's just, I had to include it on my Mount Rushmore. It's literally the best Bears Gold Prism card out there. This is also the first card that I ever bought that hit 4 digits. So that also is a very big stepping stone for me, right? Because people on your podcast, on Brett's podcast, Stacking Slabs, right, they always talk about making that jump to buy your first 3-digit card, to buy your first 4-digit card. So to have a card of such prominence be my first 4-digit card, that felt pretty cool to me, right? And that one is one that is going to be with me for a long time as well. Maybe one day if I ever get the finite, I might sell that one, but that's pipe dreaming, or wishful thinking, I should say. But yeah, not much else to say, right? 2012 Prism Gold, Devin Hester. It's also cool that I was just at the enshrinement to watch him go in the Hall of Fame. It's crazy that I'm seeing players I watched as a kid get in the Hall of Fame now, but I guess that's how time works. So.
Did you bring that with you? Of
I
course
did not.
Probably.
No.
Yeah. Too risky.
Not to Canton, Ohio, no.
Yeah. So quick question here as well, just not being overly familiar with what Hester has available. So I know 14 Prism he's in that set, but he's on Falcons, I believe. Is 13 Prism, is he in it? Is he in the Bears uniform?
Yes.
Or okay.
Yep. He is in 13 Prism in a Bears uniform. And to your point, he's in 14 Prism in a Bears uniform, but the team says Falcons. So yeah, those are good.
Oh, that makes a heck of a lot more sense, because I was looking at one yesterday. I was like, what the hell jersey is this Falcons jersey? I'm like, did they have a weird throwback?
Yeah, it's the
Wait, so Bears uniform. So so dilemma there. That leads to this question: do you want to own that card? It says Falcons on it, but he's wearing a Bears uniform.
I've thought about that one too, and I don't think I do. I couldn't do it because it's the Falcons branding is on the front of the card and on the back of the card, right? Like, yeah, he's got a Bears jersey, but it says like he was signed by the Falcons on this date, and Falcons team. So no, I'm not gonna. Mm-hmm. If I ever want to do, I mean, I would love to do the full Bears Prism Gold Hester run. So at this point, I'm halfway there, just the 2013, at least in my mind. So
I always think it's kind of nice when you only have like 2. Like then you're just like, okay, done. It's not like 8 you have to go for some of these players. It's just kind of nice.
And I've already got the harder one too. So
yeah. Well, and to your point, I mean, that's a good topic. Like to your point with that 2006 finest you're talking about and talking about some of the set collecting. Like I've really noticed that the way I've been driving is like, how do I say this? Like you get the hardest card and then it opens up, like my mind goes, okay, what's next that this kind of connects to?
Yep.
And it sounds like that's kind of the similar here where you have the hardest one. Oh, okay, might as well shoot for a 2013, but maybe you wouldn't do that in the opposite order typically. I don't know, but it's kind of an interesting idea.
Yeah, exactly. Like to your point, when I was collecting the 06 finest set, I think the Gold X Fractor was maybe like the 3rd or 4th I bought from that set, right? And then once I got the Gold X, I was like, all right, well, the 101s are going to be hard to find, but I can go get all the other colored stuff. I got the black X, the green X, all that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. So what's the next card we got here?
So the third card in my Mount Rushmore, 2011 Topps Chrome, Brian Urlacher, Super Fractor, 1 of 1. Grade a PSA 10 Gem Mint. Now, the cool part about this card was that this card was actually pulled last December by MN Sports Cards on Instagram. He does a yearly rip miss where he gathers a bunch of boxes together and then just rips them. And he had 1 box of 2011 Topps Chrome and ripped this card. I remember I was actually helping my parents decorate their house for Christmas last year, and I saw this on Instagram during that session. I was like, Mom and Dad, I gotta message this guy and kind of lock in here to make sure I can talk to him and see if I can get this card. So he was insanely fun and easy to work with. I was able to work out a deal with him pretty fast for the card. I got it in hand, and it's just one of those cards where like it's been sitting in a box for 2011 to 2023 is 12 years, right? Mm-hmm. So like it's just crazy to think that a card like this was sitting in a box, somebody pulled it, and then I got it. So I mean, if you want to say I was the second owner of this because the guy pulled it, sure. But it's still incredible to me that I was able to acquire like a Brian Urlacher Topps Chrome Super. And I believe when I made the post for it, I did the research. I think there are only 6 Topps Chrome Urlacher Supers. And this is his last one, too.
Oh, cool.
So to be able to have that kind of card for him is incredible. And the fun part about this one, too, is if you kind of look at the serial number, it ends in 504. So very close to his jersey number and this year. But yeah, I mean, by far my best Urlacher card, and you could probably argue, you could make a case that might be my best Bears card in my collection, hands down. But yeah.
So, quick question for you too. Now that you have you have the Cutler Super, you have the Urlacher Super. Do you is there a part of your head that's saying I would love to get a super for the final 2, key players from this era? I guess Brandon Marshall's probably up there too, right? You're 5th player there. Like, do you ever think of it that way too? I mean, I'm sure you'd love to add them, but I'm just wondering from like a collection perspective, if you go that direction in your head at all.
I've never actually thought about it in that sense. And I actually do have a 2015 Topps Chrome Matt Forte Super.
Oh, okay, cool.
The shine on those isn't the best, honestly, though. So that's why that one really wasn't up here. But I mean, yeah, I've never really thought about like getting it in a sense from like, oh, I have supers from every member of this team. That's a pretty cool way to think about it. But it's just not something that's crossed my mind.
Okay. Well, I'll claim that idea if you end up doing it. So
Yeah, for sure.
okay, cool. So what is the suspenseful last card we have here?
Yeah, suspenseful last card. My favorite card on my PC still. The 2012 Prism Matt Forte Orange Pylon, 1 of 1, created a BGS 9.5 gem min. I remember every detail about getting this card from. So I had a friend in town back in 2021. We were playing board games at my table, at my kitchen table, and I was just browsing eBay. It was the middle of June, and I saw this guy listed on eBay, and I was like, "Holy shit! I need to focus on this right now and get this." It was one of those where it was starting. It was like a where it has a starting bid of two. I think it was like 250 or best offer. I placed a bid immediately. I wasn't playing around for anybody to come in here and to send an offer. I placed my bid, and then and then I had my mega bid in for this card, and I remember pacing in my kitchen, watching eBay on my phone, and being like, "Please, dear God, don't let anybody outbid me." And I won the card, and I was like, not screaming super loud, but I think I got my wife a little mad. But it was incredible to be able to win that card. And then I remember too getting in the mail. I lived in a townhouse at the time, so we had like one of those like 16 shared mailbox things. And I remember like seeing the mailbox, or not seeing the mailbox truck, but knowing it got there and just running out there and getting it and running inside and unboxing it. Like it's just, I mean, he's probably my favorite player from this era of Bears football. I mean, the orange on orange just looks incredible. You can barely even tell that they're different oranges. I think they might be a little bit of a different hint or hue, but I mean, the orange border with the orange sea of the Bears just is incredible. Like I said, I got this in June of 2021, so it's been with me for over 3 years now, which is insane to think about. That I've had this card longer than I didn't have this card back in my time back in the hobby. But I mean, like we were talking about earlier, right? I mean, 2012 Prism is just it's blown up nowadays, and to be able to secure a card like this for one of my favorite players back then in 2021, just it's incredible. I mean, I'm sure hoping that one day some of the other players from the set for the Bears pop up in pylons or even finites. I would love to one day pair the finite Forte with this guy, but I mean, yeah.
Just amazing. And I love the story on this parallel too. Are you aware of it? Do you want to share it if you know the history on these?
Yeah, for sure. I know the history. So back in 2012, right, Panini inserted the black finites into the boxes, but the pylons were actually auctioned off on their website one at a time for each player, and they all came in this own little, like a little black box, and in the Panini encased with a little sticker. So to actually get the pylons, you had to log on to Panini's website and win the auction, and then get in the mail. So that's what makes these pylons so special, because none of these were pulled from boxes or packs. They were actually pulled, or not pulled, excuse me, one on Panini's website to get these in. And I know I've seen some people when they sell them online on eBay, they still have them in the original Panini CS sticker with it, or even some of them still have the original box with it, which I think is pretty cool. According to the seller of this card, he won this one off of Panini's website. So assuming he's not lying or speaking the truth, I'm only the second owner of the Forte pylon. But yeah, so I think there's a really cool backstory on these pylons, and that's what makes them a little more special to me than the finites that year, I'd say. And it's the only year of this parallel too, right?
Mhm.
I think hockey has 2013 Prism where it's like an ice shade, which is pretty cool. But I don't think they did anything similar for basketball or baseball where they have a team color or a sport parallel 101 color.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think so either. And I agree with you though. The 1 year thing I think is really, really, really cool here, specifically because, like, to me, it's not a random year of Prism. Like, this is
Yeah.
if you're going for Prism Gold, this is sets should always probably be the most sought after, I would assume. And that's to me what makes it so cool. And again, to have your favorite player, the color match, I mean, yeah, first time I ever saw you on Instagram, immediate follow. I'm like, that's a cool card. I'm like, that's so cool. Yeah. It's funny because I don't even know how long we've talked. It's probably been 3 years. We had a lot of fun at the National last year. We hung
Yeah.
out a lot. I think last year last year. Never mind. I was like, I didn't
Yes.
go 2
Yeah.
years
Last
ago. Yeah,
Chicago.
it's a lot of fun. So awesome. So then, Jason, again, really appreciate the Mount Rushmore, everything. I'd love to just wrap up here with like a fast five, if that works with you. Kind of 5 quick, fun questions, hopefully that aren't too tricky. I'll hit you with the hardest one first, though, because
Okay.
that's how this works.
I'm ready to go.
So first one. So you're talking like best Bears team, the 20, I think you said 2014, right? Was that key year?
13. 13.
13.
Yeah.
What you can pick one player from around the league to join that roster to put them over the top. And it has to be, actually, I'll say one offensive player, non quarterback. You have to run with Jay. Okay. That's an asterisk here. So one offensive player, and one defensive player. We'll count this as 2 questions because it's kind of a little bit there. Love
Okay.
to hear what you have to say.
Oh man. Okay. So 2013, funnily enough, we had like the best offense in Bears history, but our defense was the worst ever in Bears history. So obviously I need a super impactful defensive player. And this is actually a year without Urlacher. Urlacher's last season was 2012. So, man, I think you gotta go like some kind of linebacker in 2013, but I can't. Was Luke Kuechly still in the league by that point in 2013?
That's a good question. It's got to be right around there if it's not that
I
year.
know. Okay.
Well, he was good right away too.
Exactly.
He was very good right away. But yeah.
Exactly. That might be my pick if he was in the league then. I'm not entirely sure on when his rookie year was. So my point being, like, I think we need like a stud linebacker like Urlacher to kind of like be the guy to go across the field and get those tackles. That
Patrick Willis maybe just came. To
Yeah,
mind.
you know what? Let's go with that because I actually just at the Hall of Fame this season enshrinement, so we'll go with that.
Okay, cool.
And then 2013 on the offense. Excuse me. Oh man, that's even harder. I feel like. Because I don't know. I mean, your wide receivers are great. Oh, you know what we can do? I love Martellus Bennett, but give me Greg Olsen back, man. We should never trade him in the first place. I mean, Bennett was amazing for us. But let's not say we're substituting him out. Let's just say we have both, right?
Yeah,
Martellus and Greg Olsen. Like, could you imagine that too? Like having
little
both?
like Patriots 2 tight end sets. They're
both. Exactly. Like 2 tight end sets with the 2 guys outside, Alshon and Marshall. I think that's what I'm with.
Maybe a Super Bowl. Who knows? Probably not, but who knows?
Probably not. So that defense has still been terrible. So.
Okay, awesome. So 3rd question here. What is your favorite thing about being from Illinois in the Chicago area? Like, do you have a favorite restaurant, a favorite thing that you've enjoyed growing up there? Because all I hear is horrible things about Illinois. So I'd love to hear something good about Illinois.
I mean, I think you got to go with the food, right? Like, whether you're looking at like fast food stuff like Italian beefs or hot dogs, or you're going up to like some of the best restaurants in the world downtown, right? I think you just got to go with the food. It's been so good. My wife and I, I live out in the suburbs now, but I did live in the city like proper for a bit. And we still love to just go out to dinner downtown all the time and go to restaurants down there, or like sometimes on the way home from Bears games, my dad and I would stop at this hot dog stand called G and Jude's, which was voted the best hot dog stand in America by Reader's Digest back in the day. So if you go to the National next year, if anyone goes to the National, shout out G and Jude's. It's about 15 minutes from Downey Stevens. You should go there and get it. One of the best hot dogs in the country. So yeah, I think I'll go with food. That's my answer.
So they should go there instead of Subway, just to verify.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. All right. So 5th and final question. 4th question. Jeez, I almost got just one short. So 4th question here. What is the prediction for Packers-Bears matchups here? Like, when do you think the Bears are going to win their first game against the Packers? When's the last time? I don't remember.
2018.
2018. So when's the next one? Is it this year? Do you think they need one more year still before they pull that off?
Yeah, I'm gonna let it marinate for a bit. I'm gonna give it one more year still. It's so hard for me to say that they're gonna do it because they haven't in 10 games, 5 years, which is kind of wild to think about. Especially in the NFL where there's like such a level of parity. But yeah, to your point, I'll probably give you guys both the games this year, but next year we'll take one finally.
See, and the fact you're being humble about this, I think we're gonna lose both. I just have a feeling right now. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
Okay, final question here. What is one card that you are most seeking out that somebody who's listening could help you find? If there's anything that comes to mind.
Oh, okay. It's gonna kind of be 2 in 1.
Sure.
I'm still working on the Prism Gold runs for Forte and Cutler. So if anybody out there has the 2012 Prism Gold Matt Forte that is available, let me know. That is the last card I need for his run. And if anybody has the 2014 Prism Gold Jay Cutler, let me know. That's the last one I need for his run. I'm still working on getting those runs done for both of those guys, but those are probably the 2, I would say.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Jason. This is super fun. I hope everybody enjoyed. Again, favorite part about your collection is how long you've had these, and just the stories are just crazy. Probably the craziest acquisition stories I've had on here. So I really just appreciate it. Thanks so much for joining.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, man. I'm honored to be on this podcast. It's been fun listening and fun to finally be on it.